Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Sweet Spot.
We are your hosts.
I'm Diane.
And I'm Michael Pinball Clemens.
And we are so excited to be here today.
The Sweet Spot really is joy unspeakable, having balance in all you do.
It's being grateful, even when things aren't great. The desire to help others when you may be hurting yourself.
It is submission to a sovereign God who is in control when things look good or bad.
The Sweet Spot means happy times are happier, challenging times are growth opportunities, and love is the ruler of the day.
The Sweet Spot is resting and sometimes wrestling in the arms of the Almighty.
Simply put, if you're in your sweet spot, you're probably abiding in the fruits of the Spirit.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
So we hope you join us as we take this journey and engage in topics that we hope will inspire,
encourage,
challenge,
uplift,
excite,
insight,
refresh,
restore,
revitalize,
comfort,
stimulate,
and strengthen each of you in your daily walk.
Welcome to The Sweet Spot. Beautiful day, everyone, and welcome to The Sweet Spot. Today, I am so excited to have a beautiful young woman in the studio with us today. She is known for her athleticism.
Yes.
She is an author.
You go, girl.
She has been in Sports Illustrated.
Yes, she has.
She has been on the Ellen DeGeneres Show.
Let the church say amen.
And let it be known that I love that show. And she's been on numerous shows. But today, she's here in the Sweet Spot. And we're so excited. We're so excited. But you want to know what I love most about her? Is that she understands and knows how to stand boldly for Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to dig deep into today. So today we want to welcome Mo Isom to the Sweet Spot.
Thank
Mo,
you.
welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So
Thanks for being here, Mo.
I'm excited to be on the show. Thank
We're
you guys
very
for having me.
excited to have you on the show. And before we get started with anything, I just want to hold up your book.
Yes, product placement.
Yes, because you are a new author.
Yes.
And the name of Mo's book is Wreck My Life. Mm-hmm. Wreck My Life. And I'm telling you, people, you have to go out and get it, download it, whatever you need to do, because this book it's phenomenal.
Make sure you have some time because you can't put it down.
Yes. Seriously, you cannot. I started reading it and I couldn't close the book. Phenomenal read. So I want to just encourage all of our listeners to go out and grab that.
That means
book.
every one of you.
Every single one of you.
Oh, well, we're so excited to have you here with us today. Your story is fascinating. But before we get deep into your story, we just want to know a little bit about Mo and her family growing up. I know you have one sister, is that correct?
Yes, I am the baby, so I have one older sister who is just my complete opposite. I'm
So
6'1", dark hair, dark features. She's 5'2", blue eyes. Not an athlete. She's the brains. Yeah. She is brilliant. She's the brains, and I got the brawn. And
yeah, right.
we flip-flop.
I don't believe that part, but okay. Well, that's fascinating. Yes. That is fascinating.
So tell people where you grew up, because this is important too, right? Because we've talked to you a little bit, but let them know where you grew up a little bit.
Right. So I grew up in the South. I was a Georgia girl. Grew up right outside of Atlanta.
Southern Belle.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to think so.
I know a little bit about that.
We grew up right outside of Atlanta, just with a wonderful family. My dad, mom, my older sister, and myself, and grew up sort of that middle class, just Georgia suburbs, and life was comfortable. Life was easy, to say. My parents were incredible and just worked really hard to instill in us what it meant to be godly women, what it meant to go about our goals and be focused academically, athletically. So grew up with an incredible support system.
So that sounds like a really kind way of saying your parents were strict.
Translate. How did you translate?
I grew up in the South. Yes. So tell us a little bit about that. And
I'll break down the reality of
Okay.
it. My parents, if we were out in public and we started acting up, my mom had this amazing trick. She'd say, "Sweet girl," and rub our heads and dig her fingernails into the back of our ear.
I know what you mean, girlfriend.
You better not.
Yes.
But on the outside, it's like, No, they laid down the law.
That's something about moms growing up, because my mom used to do the same thing where she'll like put her hand behind you and give you a little pinch. And you know to just straighten up, and she'd be smiling. No one ever know, but you know.
Or my dad would say, I can't wait till we get home. And we can talk about this. And I'm like, but they were amazing. I mean, their direction, their instruction, they were strict with purpose. I mean, we did well academically, athletically. I was a stubborn young child that needed some pushing, needed some nails behind the ear. So.
Oh, that's great.
Well, all that sounds is that you were committed, right? You were focused. You knew what you wanted. Right?
Type A personality, very focused.
Yeah, some people say stubborn, but
I'll say type A to make it sound nicer. I was stubborn. I was stubborn and driven. And at 9 years old, actually, my neighbor had committed to college to play soccer with a college scholarship.
Wow.
And I didn't know what the word scholarship meant, but my parents explained that meant that the school paid for them to come play there, so the parents didn't have to pay for college. And so at 9 years old, I told my parents, if you will make the sacrifices, if you'll help drive me to practices, if you'll get me to the tournaments, if you'll pay for my youth endeavors, I will get a college scholarship and you won't have to worry about college. And I didn't know what I was saying, but I said it, and so I was like, I have to do it. I was very driven.
Wow.
So let me ask you, had you played soccer at that point? Were you playing soccer?
Yes.
So you were actively playing soccer at that time?
I was, yeah.
So what age did you start?
I started probably at about 6 years old.
About 6 years old.
And was always so much bigger than everyone else. I mean, I'm 6'1" now, and in 7th grade grew 7 inches in 1 year. So I was always dominant size-wise.
It sounds like we lived the same life.
Yeah. You were on
Or if you borrow my heels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's awesome. Now your dad. Now I read in your book that your dad was a well-known lawyer. Is that?
He was. He was an attorney in the area, and I mean, it was hard to meet anybody that didn't say, "Oh, we've worked with your dad. Love your dad." Yeah, he was great at what he did, and probably in my mom's eyes to a fault at times, because he would really extend himself for others to the point that it actually, I mean, he'd do work for free. He'd say, just, okay, what do you have to trade? You know, he had a big heart, and he would just serve people in that way. And yeah, was wonderful, great at what he did.
That's awesome. And your mom?
She was a marketing consultant. My mom was fabulous. She worked from home, but as a young child, you know, I would just come home and see her just working so intently and passionately, and she'd drop what she was doing to play with us and roll around the house with us. So she was wonderful. And I was much more of a daddy's girl, but my mom was just sort of, I say in the book that the flames that licked in her eyes were the same flames of passion that licked in my own.
Yes.
We are so similar. And so she was just ethereal to me almost growing up. I was a daddy's girl, but my mom always was.
That's beautiful.
She was the boss.
Hear.
Yeah.
That's beautiful to hear. That is awesome. That's awesome. So, growing up, you started 6 years old in sports. When did you get serious with your sports?
You know, I excelled quickly because of my size, just sort of because of an innate ability to play the goalkeeper position very well. Started playing on the state Olympic team, then the regional Olympic team, probably, gosh, at age 12, we won a national championship and were sent by Nike to Sweden to compete. So, yeah, already at age 12, we're having international caps.
Excuse me.
Sorry. I had the audacity to tell you that I played soccer. Nothing like that.
You almost went to Clemson. That's a good school.
Nothing like that, no.
We just started. It was amazing. Looking back, it's so amazing. When you're living in it and you're young, you just think, oh, this is normal. But no, we were traveling to Germany, Italy, Austria. We're playing all around the world and all around the country, and just doing very well, and headed into high school and was had an incredible high school career as well. Just high school soccer. You have different divisions: high school soccer, club soccer, the Olympic program. But I was very focused on getting that college scholarship, on competing at the highest level I could. And while it was amazing, that drive and that competitive nature, it was also kind of my identity. It's what I wanted to be successful in and defined by, and I wanted control of how all of that would play out. And that kind of led me down a slippery slope after a while.
Well, you mentioned that you just sort of subtly mentioned these things and sort of a little bit passe. I thrived early because I was bigger than the other kid. Like being tall doesn't give you the ability to catch.
That's right.
It doesn't give you intuition, that sixth sense to predict where the ball is going to go, to cut off the angle of the shot, and all of those wonderful things that you learn to do. And so we know you are humble, but maybe
very modest.
Maybe sort of tell us.
I was the best at what I did.
Okay. There you go.
Let's break it down.
Yes.
I didn't realize it at the time, but God gifted me with an incredible ability to play a sport at a level that was far beyond. I used to train with the 17 and 18-year-old boys when I was probably 11. I would sneak into their practice and get kicked out by the coach and come back and get kicked out. And finally he said, okay, you can train with the guys. And I'd save shots just like they were. I was so focused on being the best, you know, on making the most of this ability. I would do whatever it took. And I was good. I was really good. I'll strip off the humble. I was incredibly good.
Okay. So then you say then that drive, though, carried you down a slippery slope. Maybe this begin to describe that. What did that look like?
Yeah, so there were just a number of things. Moving from middle school age into high school, and sort of this faith I had walked through that was kind of this faith by inheritance. It was like my parents are Christians, so that makes me a Christian. And we're in church, and I'm in church, so I'm getting my Jesus points, you know. And I'm kind of assuming my seat in a church pew is earning me a seat in heaven. If I show up, then we're good to go.
Right.
This kind of stale faith, I was transitioning into high school and was like, nothing has to change here. I mean, I grew up in the Bible Belt. It was popular to be a Christian.
Absolutely.
So I'll still say that I'm a Christian. I'll still work really hard to be a good person. I know a lot about God. But there are a number of things I want to start to be in control of in my life. And really my anthem kind of became, God, you watch me work. Watch what I do. Watch, how successful I am. And so I started athletically, really desiring control there. That kind of spilled over. I was doing some acting and some pageants at the time. I wanted to be successful there. In relationships and, how things would play out at home in relationships with boys, all that. I wanted to determine, the timeline there. And then socially, I wanted to determine where I would fit, in this transition into high school, which we're all removed from now, but that's a pivotal time in young girls' lives, in anyone's young life. And I just said, God, watch me work, because I know how I want all these things to play out, and so I'm going to do it. And very quickly realized I had no control over really any of those avenues of my life. There were girls athletically who were bigger, faster, stronger, advancing through the Olympic program, getting more whispers from the college coaches. You hear about all those things in those circles. And sooner than I was. There were girls in the pageants and the acting, deeper resumes, winning things, prettier by the world's standards, more successful there. Relationships, there was tension at home with my dad that was growing as I became an angsty teenager and he's a father trying to navigate that. And, relationally things weren't playing out like I wanted. And socially, I walked into high school and was immediately labeled the huge girl. I was the giant. Here I thought I was coming into school as a successful athlete, I was charismatic, I was full of energy and life and thinking I have a lot to offer, and was immediately torn down. And so all of these things that I wanted to control, I realized I had no control over. And what do we do when control slips away? We don't just, well, I guess that's life. We desperately strive for something to be our identity. And I just desperately wanted something to be in control of. And that's where the enemy met me in a really big way and just got a foothold.
So you're not just extremely talented, you're extremely hard on yourself.
Yes.
Even today. Because at that point... Well,
looking back,
at that
different
age,
woman now, but reflecting,
So at that age... you're being a good steward of the talents that God has blessed you with.
Right.
Right? So absolutely, we're trying to figure it out at that age, and even at this age, at more than half 100, right?
That's a nice
yes.
What is that? It's a very nice.
still, there are things struggling with control and making sure we will struggle at times with those things. So, but are you saying that you were starting to see that at that time? You were starting to witness that in your life? Because that's a great deal of maturity to kind of say, really I'm doing all of these things, and I realize that I'm taking over, and I'm not. God is not, giving me the abilities and talents, but I'm recognizing that I'm actually taking the credit for that. That's a very mature.
I think the revelation about all of that came later on in life after coming to know Jesus, after having the scales kind of fall from my eyes. I looked back and saw how things had played out. It was so easy to look back and see the struggles, but in the moment. I'm in it. I'm in it.
Tough years.
Tough years that people that I was seeking my identity, and when our identity is rooted in unidentifiable things, it's just shallow, and I was so seeking my identity, my successes. Here's a great thing. I didn't write about this in the book, and I actually have never shared this in an interview. But I used to say to my mom, you just wait and see. The world will know my name. So I was very me-focused. It's almost, I kind of liken it, and I do talk about this in the book, but I was almost in like this house of mirrors. All I could see were my wants, my needs, my insecurities. Certainly couldn't set my eyes on holy things. Certainly couldn't see the world around me, because at that age, at that time, like so many of us are, we're just focused on me. And I think the enemy finds a foothold there and encourages it. Because, of course, if we're inward, my pastor gave a great quote one time. He said, sin brings us in, S-I-N, I-N, in. And it really does. And the enemy met me there and said, you don't feel like you have control over any of this, but there is something you can control. You can control your body. You could be more beautiful. You could be a better athlete. You don't have to be the giant at school. Take control of your body. It's yours. And that drew me into an eating disorder at such a young age that just became debilitating. And people hear, especially men, hear eating disorder and they think, oh, that's a body self-image issue. No. The root of an eating disorder is a control issue. And that's one thing, with the chaos of the world around me, that I could sit down, I would journal, calories in, calories out, hours I've worked out, what I probably burned, how much I'm consuming. It started kind of as anorexia and evolved to bulimia, and then evolved to like a combination of the two, where I would eat an apple and make myself purge 10, 11 times a day. I mean, it's just nothing even coming up and out, but I'm fixated, still convinced there's more I could do to be better. I was abusing diet pills, energy pills, logging. I mean, I just had binders. And it just became really an obsession.
So how old are you now?
This is high school.
This is high school.
Yeah, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Right. Wow.
That I'm wrestling with all this. And really, we should win Academy Awards, most of us, because we're incredible actors and actresses.
Absolutely.
On the surface, I'm fine,
100%.
I'm good. And in the quiet, we're like manic. And we're owned by our thoughts, the lies we've believed, the pressure, the tension, where I was just in this kind of manic state, very me-focused.
Now, as you're going through this, how is your family life with your mom and your dad and your sister? How are things with them as you're going through this?
Yeah, so these are my teenage years too. So there's your natural tension of having a, young teen in the house. But things really with my dad probably were affected most heavily, because my dad was a larger man and an overeater in many regards. And I began to analyze everything everybody else was doing too. And it's kind of just those control games you play in your mind. And that kind of grew to resentment.
Right.
And food was his vice. I mean, us coming together for meals was how he found joy. Right. And so then when I'm just nibbling and, making it awkward for everyone at the table, it just caused a lot of tension between us. And at the same time, he was really wrestling with a lot of his own stuff that I dive into in the book. And a lot of his own sin struggles and tension on his own heart. So, I'm all over the place over here, and he's navigating his own stuff. And we were just passionate, if that makes sense. When we were on good terms, we're like inseparable daddy-daughter. But when we're on bad terms, we're like, whoa, you know, just tension in the home. So those high school years were amazing and amazingly tough all at the same time.
So when you say we're amazing, so you're still at some level enjoying life because of the success you're having in the classroom, on the field. So you're going through this, and you've sort of in your mind, there's enough willpower there that life is still good, even though you're struggling with these things. Personally, as well as like, how do you do that? Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, well, it's amazing because society sometimes, the world around us, tends to be Satan's biggest cheerleader. And I say that, what I mean by that is I'm in the depths of an eating disorder in the private, but the world is suddenly affirming me. I lost weight. I was thinner. I was smaller. Suddenly, I'm winning pageants. Suddenly, I'm no longer the huge girl. Suddenly, I've got the boyfriend. You know, suddenly, I made the regional Olympic team. I was training with the national team. I was having a lot of pursuit by a lot of colleges. And so on the surface level here, there was great success. But there was tremendous pain and angst underneath and fixation underneath. And I think sometimes we see successful people and we assume, oh, their life must be amazing. What do they have to be upset about? You know, what do they have to be struggling with? But we are human, every single one of us. And you peel back that layer of the earthly successes that kind of precede us, and you have human beings wrestling with heavy stuff. And so, yes, there were days where I'd wake up and it was a great day because there were amazing highs. But there was always nagging lows too. And looking back, those probably affected my mood more than I even realized. I was just, it got me onto a roller coaster ride with God, if that makes sense. When the good things would happen, God was great. When I'd be struggling, I'm, you know, disgruntled. And it's just this up and down, back and forth, really thinking that our relationship with God was reflective of my relationship with my earthly father. When I did good things, I was praised. When we do good things, God must love us more. When we do bad things, with my dad, I was scolded, given the silent treatment. So with God, when I'm struggling, he must turn his back too. You know, I just sort of this unhealthy view of my earthly father that affected the view of my heavenly father. And that puts us on a roller coaster ride of back and forth with God, of mountain tops and valleys. You know, it's a tale as old as time with believers. It's tough.
So if there is a teenager out there right now that is struggling with an eating disorder or something else revolving around that control, what would you say to them right now?
Oh gosh, cut yourself some slack. You know, I think so many of those issues where Satan finds a foothold is the pressure we put on ourselves. And especially young people trying to find their identity, trying to map, you know, what university you're going to head to or what job field. Or there's so many decisions to make when you're so young. Breathe. The scripture, be still and know that he is God. Know that there is a God that is in control, that is holy, meaning literally above, seated above, mapping out the course of your days. Rest. We miss rest when we're young because we're desperately trying to figure life out, when really he's saying surrender to the one who has everything figured out and follow faithfully. So I would just say to anyone listening that might be wrestling with that or any of these control issues that you have the freedom in Christ Jesus to stop trying to meet everyone else's expectations, to stop beating yourself up, and to rest, to be still, to know that he's God, and to begin to listen for his leading, his guidance, his voice. Might be influencing.
Can you practically talk about this? Because the idea of being still to a teenager, right? Can you talk about practically maybe some of the things in your life that you did? How did you act that out, being still? How did you come to that place where you learned to be still?
Right. Well, that was later on in my journey. It didn't happen in my young teenage years. I pray that anyone listening thinks, well, then won't think that maybe it'll happen later in my journey. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your life. I wasted time still wrestling, still struggling, and more adversity came that I'm sure we'll touch on too. But when Jesus really intersected my life and things began to click and he called that of me, be still, know that I'm God. The practical things that meant for me was truly stopping, taking time each day to stop, to open up the Word of God. You know, sometimes we think, oh, God's just so silent in my life. How can we say he's silent if our Bible's actually closed? Open up the Word of God. Spend time. I began to develop a really rich prayer life that was a blend of two things. In one regard, it was the true reverent, you know, stopping everything I am, down on my knees, true prayer to a holy God. In another regard, it began beautiful all day long conversation with God in my heart and in my head. So if you say, well, I'm doing, I don't have time to just take 30 minutes and stop and be still. Well, Lord, neither do I. But I have 30 seconds here. I have 5 minutes in the car. I have, 4 minutes here and a few seconds here. And if we can keep consciously at the forefront of our mind all day long, when you have a breath, be aware, be conscious, be prayerful, in a natural, beautiful, fun conversation with God. That small shift can have a mighty shift in your life because you're actually focusing on relationship with God, with Jesus, and not going about your day 90 miles an hour and hoping he'll send a blessing down somewhere.
That's right.
Because that mentality doesn't get us through the adversity when the adversity comes.
Right.
That mentality just wants blessing and then gets thrown off course when the hard stuff comes.
Yeah, that's it.
So you're able to make it through all of this, and then you got that scholarship that you promised Mom and Dad they would get.
They were happy.
Yes. If they supported you, that you would get it, and you got that. And
you didn't just get it, but you got it to one of the largest universities.
Elite.
Yeah, LSU, which at the time, actually, their soccer program had just changed hands. It wasn't actually a very dominant program in the SEC. I wanted to stay SEC because I wanted my parents to be able to come to my games.
Southeastern Conference for those.
Southeastern Conference, yes. So you're looking at the Texas, Georgia, Florida, that area in the U.S. I hate cold weather. Sorry, I wasn't coming anywhere near Canada to play soccer. Sorry. I didn't like the cold weather and didn't want to go so far west that my parents couldn't come. So chose SEC. LSU wasn't all that dominant of a program, but they pursued me really heavily. I trained with their goalkeeper coach in the Olympic program some. So my dad actually talked to me and he said, pay him a courtesy visit. They're sending you a letter every single day of the calendar year. Go visit their school. And I
sent you a letter every day?
Every day, except when post wouldn't come on Sundays.
Oh, my goodness. That's recruiting.
That's recruiting. Different, and notes from the coach almost every day on these they sent
That's the same thing I had to do when I was courting Diane. Yes.
Now you know how to pursue a girl.
Every
day. Stay on it. And eventually she'll say, maybe I'll give him a courtesy. And you never know where that could lead. But I just went on a courtesy visit to LSU and stepped out of that car. And, there's something about Baton Rouge. There's something about Louisiana. It was just so right. Wow. And it was really, the coach kind of left me an interesting thought. He said, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? Do you want to go to a well-established program and be another name on the roster? Or do you want to step into a program that is working to build towards a goal, be a big fish in this pond and help lead a program and build a legacy? Wow. And I was like, how can you leave me this way? Come on. Recruiting at its finest.
Okay.
That wasn't just recruiting. That's knowing who you're recruiting, right?
Yes, and knowing my personality.
He had your bio.
I can be a big fish?
Type A personality?
Seriously. So I committed to LSU and headed off to, actually graduated high school then a semester early and headed off to Louisiana a semester early.
So you went a semester early. And you were actually in school?
Yep, enrolled. worked my classes around in high school to graduate ahead of schedule. Went over to Baton Rouge right in the middle of the school year,
Yes.
which had its own set of challenges because no one else is coming in new at that time.
Right.
It was hard. I didn't feel like I really identified with a class so much. I was just kind of thrown into the fire, but I wanted that spring of training under my belt because I knew I would be starting in the fall, and I wasn't trying to step into the SEC with no clue of what to expect.
Right.
So yeah, came to Baton Rouge a semester early, and it was just tremendous.
If I had your level of desire, I would have done something with my life.
Hey, okay, show the ring on your finger. Right there, the CFL heat you're packing. You've done some stuff with your life.
Well, listen, your story is just fascinating, and it gets even better. We're going to take a short break, but you know what? We'd like to have you back to do another show because we want to continue. And
well, the story's just beginning.
The story is really just beginning.
We haven't even gotten into
we haven't even gotten to the meat of it.
Yeah.
So we want to thank our listeners for tuning in today. As we always love to end with the words of Everett. Everett, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, I ought to do. What I ought to do, by the grace of God, I will do. Stay tuned. Join us here next week as we continue with Mo Isom. And please go out and get her book. It is a phenomenal read. Again, the title is Wreck My Life. We'll see you again here at the Sweet Spot.